Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher. It is about us, the authors.
Okay, I guess I'm on, huh?
Yes.
Okay, well, hello. My name is Carl Jonoff. You'll know me with my book, with my pseudonym, Kurt Niemann. This is my wife, Shirley. And one of the reasons why I really insist that she be involved in everything that we're doing with the book is because if it hadn't been for her motivation, I'd have never written the book. She just, I guess, one day got tired of hearing my war stories and said, well, why don't you write it all up? And I did. And I actually hand wrote the entire book, and she actually typed the entire book for me, for which I'm eternally grateful. In any event, I want to reiterate just a couple things from yesterday very quickly. One of them is never believe that you can actually totally edit your own book without any outside help, because you're only going to see what it is that you think you're seeing. Need to have a good publisher, a good group of people who can go through your book and edit your book. And boy, I do recommend Reader's Magnet. The name of my book is Badge 411. You know, this is really strange trying to figure out what I'm doing on the screen because it's not a mirror image. Anyway, Badge 411, and there's my pseudonym, my pen name down there, Kurt Niemann. Okay, the reason for it being Kurt Niemann is because when I was a very, very young child in very difficult times, I was born in 1938. I was being raised by nuns, and my closest friend in the organization was another child named Kurt. So this is in memory of Kurt. Niemann, spelled a little bit differently in German, means nobody. So there I am. I'm a nobody writing this book. And I was asked at the last time around, what kind of a book is this? What sort of aim? Is this a fiction? Is it a sort of autobiography? What is it? Well, I did 32 years as a probation officer, and this book contains some 80 odd stories, short stories about incidents that I encountered while I was a probation officer. Some of them on the street, some of them in court, some of them in residential treatment centers, on and on it goes. And what I want to say is that when you are writing, one of the things, especially something like stories about juvenile offenders, any offender, right? Almost anybody, be careful that you don't get sued. Litigation is not fun. So what I did to kind of quote an old detective named Joe Friday is, the names and places have been changed to protect the innocent. And I intend to remain innocent, so that when you read my stories, you're going to be reading what actually happened and how it actually happened, but the names and the locations are going to be changed because I don't want to be sued. Simple as that. Why did I write this book? Well, I discovered through a series of incidents that history is a strange thing. If you read a book or read articles on any kind of history, I'm going to assure you that whoever wrote that history had an agenda of some kind or another. I think it's kind of well known that most history of the world is written by winners of wars and whatnot. So that you need to study every aspect, not just one that's being pointed out to you by a writer that has an agenda. Yeah, I have an agenda. My agenda is to cause people to understand what the world of crime really is outside of Hollywood, and how different it is, how different it can be. Very early into my career, I met an old guy as part of my job. He was involved in the incident. He's a really old guy, and he was a black guy, and he told me he had been a Buffalo Soldier. Well, what is a Buffalo Soldier? I'd never heard of them. Buffalo Soldiers who were black soldiers in the 19th century who served mostly in the southwestern states. They were all black. The officers, of course, were white because that's the way it was in the military in those days. But he had been part of the group of soldiers that chased after Pancho Villa, for heaven's sake, across the border. And the more he told his stories, the more I realized nobody knows about this unless they hear it from a guy who'd actually been there. How important is it that we know how the common man lived, how the common person lived and survived? And you're not going to find that in history books most of the time. You're going to see stories about presidents, generals, kings, queens, popes, but not the little guy. And the little guy is the one who actually makes history what it is.
Can you share how you
Can I
felt
share?
living as though you were in a constant risk? This is by Kathy Barnes.
How did I feel even though I were in constant risk? You know, it rarely crossed my mind.
Probably because he was a young guy.
the risk. There were times when I was so very clearly at risk that, for example, the time when during a pre-sentence investigation I was involved in, I knocked on a door and the door opened, and the lady I was supposed to be talking with was standing there with a big smile and a powder blue negligee. I did realize that I was in some kind of danger. It's a funny thing. I hadn't thought about talking about this this early in the game during these next 2 weeks of interviews, but you know, funny thing about working in gangs, the people who you work with will generally, number one, for me, I thought gangsters were better people, had better personalities than a lot of other career criminals because they had they had they were honest.
They had a code of ethics.
They had a code of ethics, exactly right. So that if you caught them, they were caught and they do their time, and it was kind of an honor to do time. You'll see photographs of some people with tears running down their eyes, tattoos, and that's the same thing as the kind of ribbons we wore on our shirt when I was in the Marine Corps. It's kind of yeah, I'm a veteran, and here's how. But it was typical for gangsters in my gangs to talk about what gangsters in other police, probation, parole officers' gangs were doing in order to snitch them out and get them in difficulty, so that I was their PO. Kind of thing. I'll talk more about that, but I don't think I was ever in real heavy dangers. Yeah, some officers did get shot at. I wasn't one of them.
I'm going to interject here just real quickly. When I was typing up all of the stories, and I was either laughing, crying, or going, how in the world did you get yourself into that? So yeah, there was some serious stuff, and there is some serious stuff in the book.
Anyway, this Buffalo Soldier and my wife were the two primary people who convinced me I really ought to write my story. And you ought to write your story as well. Everybody has a story. Everybody has things that happen that are amazing, sometimes gut-wrenching, but you have children, you have grandchildren, great grandchildren who are going to want to say, well, what did that old guy do? How did he do that? Well, hopefully my great grandchildren and great great grandchildren will read my book and find out. But the Jonoff family, that's my family, came to this country in 1921 at the end of the Bolshevik Revolution. That family was on the wrong side of the winners, and they decided to go to the United States. Old Ivan Jonoff had a large family, had a lot of children, including an infant who was my aunt. During their trek across Europe into the Mediterranean to get into the ocean to go to the United States, this infant child was constantly sick, constantly crying, and other people in the group were asking grandfather to just let her be in the snow and let her die peacefully and be done with it. And he refused. He carried her all the way. She died in her 90s here in the United States. How would I have known that if somebody hadn't told me? How would I know the problems that these people that were making this massive trek from Russia and Bulgaria, et cetera, across the ocean? It's not the same reading it as written by some historian. It's something that somebody who has experienced can really best tell what happened.
By reading the title, I instantly identify the book as a narrative based on an uniformed officer's life. Yes, this is by Cleo Lopez.
No, Chloe.
Chloe, I'm sorry, Chloe. I'm
Chloe.
sorry. I can read. No, I can't.
No, I always was plain clothes. As a matter of fact, when I was working in a gang unit, which was about 12 years of my 32 years of service, I was wearing lace-up boots and a motorcycle jacket because I rode my motorcycle out there in that area. If for no other reason than I could clearly see what's going on and I could get away quickly. No, I never did wear a uniform. Probation officers wear uniforms under some circumstances, including working in detention. But I never did.
He was a wee bit of a rebeller.
I was. Okay, well, why did I write this book? Well, because I think that some people really need to know the nature of criminal justice and the criminal justice system. Who are these people? Anybody who lives in this country, anybody who lives in any country that is subject to the criminal justice system or who operates within it. You need to know what really is and really isn't. Please don't go to people who say, oh, I'm an expert and I know everything there is to know about all of this stuff. And then as they talk, you understand that they don't know anything about it at all.
Okay. I think the book is a breath of fresh air because we seldom hear stories from prison probation officers.
And
Riley Miller.
Thank you, Riley. And yeah, I'll be telling a lot of those stories. Some of them here during these interviews, and some 82 of them. I think it's 82 stories that I have in the book.
And two, Riley, it's so important for students that are going to be studying all of this to go in for their career. This book is, in my opinion, is a very valuable required reading for any college student that's going to be studying juvenile or even adult probation, because I have to say Carl's honesty in the book on how everything really happened. It's all fact. It's all fact based on fake names, but it's still fact.
Doggone it, now I forgot what I was going to say.
Sorry.
Well, the criminal justice system is a highly complex system. And in order to be a probation officer who is absolutely technically a, quote, officer of the court, of a trial court or superior court, if you will, you need to have at least a bachelor's degree in a related field. Again, my related field for my bachelor's was sociology. I have a dual master's degree. One of them is criminal justice. The other is social work. Probation officer.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Melissa. Wow.
I've got 82 of them in my book. The most memorable experience I had. Let me just try this one on you. I had on my caseload a family that included a 14-year-old offender, 14-year-old gangster whose body was absolutely covered with tattoos, most of them self-applied. And when I first met him, he looked like he was just short of being a corpse. He had been so badly beaten up by some other gangsters. And he was really a tough nut to work with for a long time. Finally, at last, when he was 16, I got him a job with a company that does janitorial work. And he really seemed to like that work. And the next thing I knew, about a year and a half, 2 years later, he had saved up enough money that he ended up being a partner in that company. Then later, he bought the company. Then, when he was in his early 20s, he bought another janitorial service. Then he sold both of them and he bought, are you ready? An insurance agency. He spent the rest of his life wearing a suit. He had gone to school. He had learned about various aspects of insurance, and he hired people who were experts in it. And he ran the company, and he made a lot more money than I did as a probation officer. And that's from what was originally a 14-year-old tattooed Hispanic gangster. So I think, of course, he had his shirt always buttoned to the top, and he always wore a tie, always had long sleeves because his tattoos couldn't show. But he spent the rest of his career doing insurance, for heaven's sake. It's really difficult to think about what would have been the most memorable experience, as so many of them are. One of the things that I learned early on is that there is a vast difference between working adult probation and working juvenile probation. In juvenile probation, you're working a different set of trial court or superior court called juvenile court, or if you will, the juvenile justice system. And it's a really totally different thing. It's in Arizona, juvenile can be charged with a criminal offense, or if you will, juvenile delinquency, from the age of 8 on. Actually, technically, any of those juveniles, if the crime is serious enough, if the history is serious enough, can be tried as an adult. And I do remember a 12-year-old juvenile who violent enough that he did end up in Arizona State Prison at age 12. You'll see people today, if you are reading the news or watching it on the computer or whatever, who are 16 and 17, who are involved in street outfits, who are being charged today as an adult. There's a group in Gilbert, Arizona right now that has been making big press, and there are juveniles who are being charged. So what can happen as a maximum sentence?
Back to your book.
From Melissa.
That's the same question.
Oh, okay. One of the things that the prosecutor has to look out for, hopefully, is the safety of the community. So that if you run across a mass killer, and believe it or not, there are some juveniles I've known who are mass killers, do you really want them to go to the juvenile Department of Corrections and serve time until they're 20 or 21 or 25? Or do you think that they need to not be in the community at all? Some of them, I've known some violent people who ended up being pretty much okay. But I've known some other violent people who are juveniles who did need to be given a life sentence. My wife is pointing to my book.
Well, I'm just thinking that this is one of the many reasons why the book is so valuable, because it teaches young officers to look for these abilities of these young kids. And excuse me. And it's so valuable for them to not be pre-programmed to assume the worst and to work with them. And this is one of the amazing characteristics of Carl in his years, that he was so in tune to all of the kids that he worked with, and that he valued all of these kids, and he did not put them in little cookie cutter boxes and say, well, this is it, this is all there is for you. He clarifies and teaches all these different aspects because of all these different stories.
As I went along writing the book, I came to realize that it really would have been nice to have books like this when I was in graduate school. So I'm going to see if I can convince some folks who are in graduate schools, teaching in graduate schools, to consider this book. And again, you have had a special life. It's had ups and it's had downs, and it's had consequences. Your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, on and on and on and on, really deserve to know how your life has been and why, and what you've done and what you haven't done. Consider writing your own journal, your own book. Okay?
We're down to 3 minutes.
Yeah, I see that I'm backstage and it says only the host can see you.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
That thing came up and I don't know. Who knows?
yeah. Well,
Either this is working or it's not, dear.
yeah, I think I'm just about done. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about the difference between probation officers, parole officers, police officers, corrections officers, what all these the different jobs are. They're all law enforcement officers, but they all have a little bit different job and they all blend in. The unit that I was assigned to in the inner city had a combination of sheriff's deputies, Phoenix police officers, probation officers, including myself, parole officers. One of the differences that one of the things that the police really enjoyed having a parole officer along with was he didn't have to have a warrant to go into a house. If it was a parolee's house, he was able to go in. And there's just so many neat things that we're going to talk about in the next several days. So be with me. Thank you.
Okay, 2 minutes. So I don't know. Maybe just shut it down.
That doesn't. No, that doesn't. I don't know what to do. Chat with anyone in the studio.